The fog over the Grand Canal parted just enough to let late afternoon sunlight gild the water, turning every slow ripple into liquid brass. Carlo Bianchi poled his black lacquered gondola away from the Rialto's shadow and hummed the last plaintive note of O Sole Mio. The tourists he had dropped at Cardoro were already vanishing into souvenir shops, but Carlo's voice lingered, curling under archways and around moss-rimmed steps. He loved this lull before the carnival evening began, the fleeting pocket of calm when masks were still tucked in pockets, when the city felt like an actor backstage, catching its breath before the next scene. Carlo reached for his thermos of espresso, balancing it on the small teak table he had installed beside the brass seahorse ornament. A swallow of the dark, syrupy brew warmed him from throat to boots. That was when the whisper began. "Scusa, signore, may I trouble you for passage?" The voice reached Carlo as though spoken beside his ear, yet the deck behind him was empty. He spun, almost capsizing himself, and scanned the quay. Only laundry fluttered from a top-floor balcony, and a calico cat crouched on the steps licking canal water from its paw. "Perhaps I am more transparent than I wish," the voice sighed. A chill lifted the hairs on Carlo's arms despite the coffee. "Madonna Santa," he breathed, crossing himself. "I will not do you harm," the voice continued. It sounded male, educated, with an accent from centuries past. "I am bound to these waters until I unburden my heart." Carlo had been warned by his grandmother that Venice, like any old city, owned layers of inhabitants, not all of them visible, but he'd always thought Nona's stories were meant to keep him from prowling narrow Calais at night. Now, alone on the shimmering canal, he wondered whether her bedtime tales had simply readied him for this precise moment. He cleared his throat. "She says the living must show hospitality to the restless, or the restless will show themselves uninvited. So, how may I serve you, signore?" A shimmer, lilac-tinged, formed near the prow. The vague outline of a man in a long cloak, tricorn hat in hand. His form was incomplete, edges dissolving into mist like watercolor left in rain. Yet his eyes, dark hollows of regret, were terribly clear. "I am Giorgio Tiepolo," the apparition said. "Painter, dreamer, fool. 3 centuries ago I disappeared one night of carnival, and with me vanished a small portrait destined for the Doge. It was never recovered. Until that canvas is seen again in the light of day, I wander. But I believe the work has resurfaced, though in pieces." "In pieces," Carlo echoed, keeping an oar's length between himself and the ghost, just on principle. "Someone stole fragments of my painting to disguise a modern theft," Giorgio explained. "I seek absolution, and perhaps justice." Carlo rubbed his temple. "I'm a gondolier, signore. My skills include steering, singing off-key, and recommending trattorie that overcharge tourists. Not sleuthing." "Yet who in Venice hears more confessions than a gondolier?" the ghost replied. "The waters carry every secret, and your heart is kind." Carlo frowned. Compliments from spectres were disorienting. Still, he could not abandon a soul in torment. "All right, Signore Ghost. Tell me what you know." The sun slipped behind a chimney, and the canal darkened to pewter. Giorgio's voice softened. "Tonight, at the Palazzo Soranzo, a masked ball will dazzle carnival celebrants. Guests will admire an installation by the renowned contemporary artist Luca Fanati, a mirrored cube said to reflect infinite selves. Yet hidden in the cube's hollow core is a stolen painting by Fanati's rival Valentina Rossi, missing since last week's heist at Galleria Moderna. To obscure the theft, Fanati lined the core with scraps of an older canvas, My portrait of the Doge's daughter. Carlo's eyes widened. You're saying Fanati stole Rossi's work and is hiding it inside his own exhibit? And lined it with pieces of your priceless painting, which, by the way, no one knew existed? Precisely. Why would he do that? Because Fanati believes reporters will discover the Rossi canvas tomorrow, after critics hail his cube tonight. The scandal will ensure both his fame and Rossi's obscurity. As for my portrait, its fragments will be dismissed as meaningless antique detritus. Carlo whistled. That's diabolical. Also extremely messy. I was messy in life, Giorgio confessed. I loved the Doge's daughter beyond reason. We planned to elope. I painted her likeness to carry with me, but I drowned that very night. Whether by accident or sabotage, I do not know. My portrait sank to the silt, or so I assumed. The ghost's shoulders shook. I cannot rest while my love's face is shredded for some charlatan's scheme. Carlo felt an unexpected lump in his throat. All right, he said, gripping the rail. We'll recover the fragments and the stolen Rossi painting, but how do we get into Palazzo Soranzo? That place is invitation only. You will find a mask in your locker, Carlo, a gift from one whose heart you once shielded. My locker? Wait, are you talking about Bianca at the boatyard? She never said. The heart's gratitude is often wordless, Giorgio murmured. Put on the mask, glide to the palazzo at midnight. The canal entrance will be busy. No one will question another gondola arriving with costumed guests. Then, listen to my whispers. I shall guide you. Carlo hesitated. Ghostly scavenger hunts were not listed in the gondolier's union contract. Yet the city's breathless twilight, the oncoming swell of carnival music, and the sorrow in Giorgio's voice tugged at him like a tide. Nona always said, "A Bianchi never turns away a soul in trouble," he muttered. "Fine. Meet me here at 11, Signore Tiepolo, and please don't rattle any more chains before then." The ghost tipped his tricorn. Mille grazie. As the apparition dissolved, the calico cat meowed approvingly and leapt onto Carlo's prow, tail erect like an exclamation mark. You too, eh? Carlo laughed, scratching its ear. All right, we have a case, Gatto. Let's find that mask. The boatyard locker room smelled of linseed oil and seawater. In Carlo's metal cubby, amid spare striped shirts and rain slickers, lay a white half-mask edged in silver filigree. A note inside read simply, "Per il mio eroe di passaggio, Bianca." Carlo touched the inscription. Months ago, he'd ferried Bianca's grandmother to hospital through a storm when ambulances were stranded. He never expected repayment. The mask fit perfectly, and he tucked his dark curls inside a tri-cornered hat for flair. By the time he poled toward Palazzo Soranzo, night had spread its velvet cape over Venice. Lights twinkled from balconies like rows of carnival beads. Mandolin music floated across the water, mingling with laughter and the boom of distant fireworks. Carlo's passenger seat held only the cat, now christened Toto. But appearances could be deceiving, for Giorgio's lilac gleam hovered beside the tiller, invisible to all but Carlo. At the palazzo's rear watergate, gondolas queued like sleek black swans. Masked revelers in brocade capes and feathered headdresses stepped onto lantern-lit steps where footmen accepted invitations. Carlo kept his hat low and nodded to the steward. "Delivery for Messer Fanati," he improvised, gesturing to a garment bag slung over Toto. Inside was merely rope and a flashlight. The steward, harried by the clamour of guests, waved him through. Inside, the boathouse led to a vaulted hallway glowing with candelabras. Music pulsed, a modern remix of Vivaldi, while scents of truffle risotto and sweet frittelle fried dough carried on warm currents. Carlo's stomach rumbled, but duty first. Giorgio's whisper coiled around his ear. North Gallery. The cube waits there. Carlo eased past clusters of guests discussing NFTs versus frescoes, slipping behind velvet drapes each time a familiar face approached. Gossip travelled fast in Venice. Any aunt could recognize him under half a mask. At the gallery, the mirrored cube commanded the centre like a glittering fortress. Each face reflected the masked crowd myriad times, dizzying and narcotic. Fenati himself lounged nearby, disguised in a gold Balta mask, yet unmistakable by his peroxide-streaked curls. A curator announced, "At midnight sharp, Maestro Fenati will unveil the cube's inner sanctum. We invite a single volunteer to step inside and confront their infinite selves." Carlo's pulse trip-hammered. Midnight. They had less than an hour to remove the concealed paintings before Fenati executed his grand reveal. But how to get near the cube unnoticed? Toto provided the answer by trotting straight toward a buffet table stacked with stuffed olives. A waiter shrieked, dropping a tray. Glass shattered. Olive brine splashed expensive shoes. The ensuing commotion drew guests and staff alike. Carlo seized the distraction, slipped velvet rope, and pressed a hidden latch at the cube's base as Giorgio directed. With an almost inaudible click, a mirrored panel slid open. Inside, the chamber was hollow, lined with reflective mylar, and, as the ghost had said, patchwork rectangles of cracked sepia canvas. In the centre rested a rolled bundle tied with twine, undoubtedly the Rossi. Carlo's hands shook, but he managed to tug the bundle free and stuff it under his cloak. Now the fragments. He lifted one. A woman's unfathomably tender eyes gazed from chipped paint. Even by moonlight, her presence humbled him. He couldn't salvage every shred. Dozens were glued in place with industrial epoxy. Giorgio's voice quavered against Carlo's heart. "Take the face, at least." Carlo nodded, slipped the delicate fragment into an oiled envelope he'd pocketed, and replaced the panel. Just as he stepped away, a single mirror tile he'd touched detached and clinked to the floor. The sound cut through the din like a bell. Fenati's head swiveled. "You there! What are you doing?" Carlo bolted. Guests shrieked as he barreled through, toppling a sculptural arrangement of blown glass jellyfish. He sprinted down a staircase towards the boathouse, velvet drapes whipping at his ankles. Footsteps thundered behind him, Fenati and 2 security guards. The water gate loomed ahead. Carlo leapt into his gondola, almost landing on Toto, and thrust the oar. But the boat's nose struck something, another craft tethered crosswise, blocking exit. Fenati laughed from the steps above. "Thought you could thieve the thief, did you? Idiota." Carlo's palms sweated. He couldn't outrow them while trapped. Yet the canal, narrower here, held secrets. Giorgio's whisper surfaced. "Dive, Carlo." "Beg your pardon," Carlo hissed. "Dive. I shall steer the boat. I'm not Aquaman." Behind him, the stairway clanged with descending boots. Desperate, Carlo stripped his cloak, and with it, the Rossi bundle, stuffing both into a waterproof net attached to Toto's life preserver, standard for working gondolier's pets. "Guard this with your 9 lives," he commanded. Then he plunged. The January water was black knives. Carlo kicked downward, groping along submerged pilings where barnacles rasped his fingers. Above, Fenati roared, "Where did he go?" Carlo's lungs burned, but Giorgio's liability plan proved sound. When Carlo surfaced beneath the adjacent dock, the gondola slipped free of the blocking craft, as if guided by an unseen hand, and glided toward the mouth of the narrow canal, Toto a proud figurehead. Venati's guards scrambled with ropes. One lost his balance and tumbled into the water, curses bubbling. By the time they reoriented, Carlo hauled himself onto a mossy step farther down the quay, dripping but grinning. He whistled. Toto steered the unmanned gondola, with a little spectral help, to him, and he hopped aboard. They vanished into copper lamplit labyrinths before Venati could summon patrol boats. Safe beneath the stone arch of Ponte dei Pugni, Carlo unwrapped the Rossi. Even in dim light, the vibrant swathes of colour, an abstract homage to Venetian sunrises, sang. Rossi deserved to exhibit tomorrow, not Venati's ego trip. Carlo re-rolled the canvas carefully. "And you, Bellissima," he whispered to the fragment of Giorgio's painting. The Doge's daughter's eyes held both mischief and sorrow. He imagined her waiting on a moonlit balcony for a lover who never came. Giorgio manifested, more solid than before, silver starlight in his cloak folds. "Thank you, friend." His voice trembled with wonder as he gazed at the fragment. "We aren't done," Carlo said. "We need proof to expose Venati. The critics are due at the Palazzo at noon. Without the Rossi hidden inside, he might claim sabotage." "One thing modern charlatans fear," Giorgio mused, "is public embarrassment. I suggest we provide it." At dawn, Carlo stood outside the small Campo San Barnaba news kiosk, clutching cappuccinos and waiting for Valentina Rossi. He'd phoned the artist at 4 a.m., apologizing profusely for waking her, but promising the return of her painting and a chance to confront the thief. Skeptical, Rossi had agreed to meet, armed with her lawyer. When she arrived, bright-eyed despite the hour, Carlo unveiled her rolled canvas. Tears sparked in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth. The lawyer inspected it, nodding. Carlo then produced the envelope containing the Doge's daughter's face and recounted Giorgio's tale. Rossi listened. Instead of incredulity, a smile curved her lips. "Venice is a palimpsest of stories," she said. "I accept the ghost. What's the plan?" Together, they devised a quietly theatrical revenge. Rossi contacted journalists, hinting at a dramatic twist unfolding at Venati's exhibition and inviting them to witness it. Shortly before noon, Carlo, Rossi, her lawyer, and 3 reporters rowed the gondola to Palazzo Soranzo. Giorgio lingered invisibly nearby, while Toto napped on the prow, exhausted by his midnight heroics. Inside the North Gallery, Venati preened beside his cube, basking in flashbulbs. Carlo noted new screws along the base panel. Venati must have noticed tampering and reinforced it. Too late. Rossi stepped forward, maskless, shining with the righteous fury of a woman deprived of sleep and credit. "Buongiorno, Luca," she called. "I believe you have something of mine." Venati's posture tightened. "Valentina, darling, what a surprise." "It shouldn't be. You stashed my painting inside this gaudy wardrobe mirror, did you not?" Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters raised phones. Venati's laugh quavered. "Absurd," Rossi signalled Carlo. He handed her the rolled canvas. "Then explain how it's here, freshly removed from your installation hours before your scheduled reveal." Venati's face blanched. "And one more thing," Rossi continued. "Explain these." She produced enlarged, high-resolution photos Carlo had taken of the cube's interior before replacing the panel, photos now plastered on the journalist's tablets. They clearly showed torn pieces of a Baroque portrait. Venati sputtered. "They must be fakes." A serene elderly man wearing bifocals stepped forward. Professor Benedetti, curator of Venetian antiquities, lured by Rossi. He examined the images, then the actual fragment in Carlo's hand. This paint composition and craquelure date to early 18th century. The brushwork suggests Giorgio Tiepolo, cousin to the famous Giovanni Battista Tiepolo, believed lost. Cameras snapped. Flashbulbs popped like popcorn. Fenati's shoulders collapsed. Rossi turned to reporters. Seems Maestro Fenati is less interested in reflecting infinite selves than in hiding someone else's. Security escorted Fenati toward the main staircase, his protests drowned by shutters clicking. The curator urged protective gloves on Carlo and took custody of the Doge's daughter fragment, promising conservation and further search for remaining pieces. As light poured through high windows, Giorgio shimmered into view only Carlo could see. "You have freed me," the ghost said, voice glowing. "She will live again on canvas, whole, and my story will be told." "Stay a while," Carlo urged. "See what becomes of her." "I believe I shall, briefly, but first know my gratitude." Giorgio raised a translucent hand. For a heartbeat, Carlo felt solid pressure, like a friend's squeeze. Then sunlight scattered Giorgio into motes of pearly dust. They ascended the atrium, twirling with the glitter of carnival confetti, before dissolving in the rafters. Carlo exhaled, realization sinking in. Not every day does a gondolier shepherd a soul to peace. Carnival's last night unfolded with unabashed riot. Masked dancers filling St. Mark's Square, fireworks painting indigo skies, and children in capes chasing pigeons through spirals of glitter. Carlo moored near the Campo Santa Margherita kiosk, where Bianca ladled hot chocolate from a vendor cart. He approached, mask dangling at his belt. "Grazie for the loan, signorina," he said, returning the silver filigree disguise. Bianca's hazel eyes sparkled. "I had a hunch you'd need it." He bought 2 cups of chocolate, thick enough to stand a spoon. "Care to join me on a moonlit ride?" he asked. Bianca surveyed the riotous carnival chaos. "Only if your mysterious cat comes along. Toto never misses an adventure." Above them, church bells tolled midnight, ushering in Ash Wednesday. But for the moment, Venice still belonged to revelry and reflection. Mirror cubes dismantled, ghosts laid to rest, and a gondolier who had learned that the difference between ferrying passengers and rescuing lost souls was merely how closely one listened to the water. Carlo offered Bianca his hand and guided her into the gondola. With a gentle push of the oar, they slipped into the silver-speckled canal, following currents that knew every secret yet hummed now with contentment. Somewhere, far below, perhaps Giorgio's laughter mingled with the lapping tide, finally at ease. Toto curled at the prow, tail wrapped around the fragment of a song Carlo had begun earlier. He finished it now, voice echoing under bridges, offering its plea to the city he loved. "Return to me, my Venezia, in morning light again." From the hush of narrow waterways, one could almost imagine a ghostly tenor answering, "I am returned, amico, grazie e addio."